Let's go to Mark chapter 3. This is where we spent some time last week. We're in a vision series talking about our church, who we are, and what we do. Last week we spoke about following Jesus and his way. That at the core of our church, we want to be disciples of Jesus and follow him. Amen? We want to be with Jesus, become like Jesus, and do what Jesus did. That's what it means to be a disciple, not just showing up and nodding our head at just the right place in the sermon, right? Can you nod your head with that for me? All right, we can do that too. But following Jesus, that he would be the foundation and cornerstone of what we're all about. Today we're going to talk about family. But before we do that, I want to tell you about an exciting adventure that I went on while I was in college. Took a journey to a special place with a friend of mine, my brother-in-law, Joe Testa, who was not my brother-in-law at the time. But during the summer, he came up to live with me in upstate New York, had a lot of adventures. And one of our greatest adventures was to the Olive Garden. During the time of year, that great high and holy day called the Never-Ending Pasta Bowl, which I saw is back for $13.99. It used to be like $8.99, but you know, it's all right. And so at the Olive Garden, you get unlimited bread and unlimited salad anyway. And for a really low price, you could get as much pasta as you wanted. Now, don't be fooled. It comes out in this big bowl the first round, and then it comes back in successive smaller bowls. But you can order any shaped pasta, any sort of sauce to go on top of. You can add sausage. You can add a meatball. I mean, it's an unbelievable experience if you haven't ever done it. And so Joe and I were much younger and much, I don't want to say wiser, much more foolish than we are now. And so we would make it an annual tradition to go to the Olive Garden and compete with who could eat more of this pasta. And so there's an important element to competitive eating where you have to make wise choices. If you go with the cream sauce, you're done in 3 or 4 bowls. If you get even the meat sauce, you know, maybe 5 or 6. But if you go with that nice marinara, you can go for at least 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 bowls. No meatballs. It's extra money anyway. You go in there, and so Joe and I would just go back and forth eating these bowls of pasta. And you would try to do the same bowl and wait for the other person to be done and then order the new bowl. I had a friend who worked at the Olive Garden, and he said that it is a terrible job. You're constantly getting people more salad, more breadsticks, more free refills, and then at this pasta bowl time, it's just out of control. And so we ate and ate and ate and ate, and my wife, Jess, was there watching this whole thing happening. She was our emergency contact in case something happened. We probably ate maybe, I want to say somewhere between 8 to 10 bowls of pasta. What we did not factor in was that pasta expands in your stomach. Not right away, but just after you paid the bill. And so my brother and I were seated in the booth at the Olive Garden. And when we got up, we were stuck in that position. And so we literally, as Joe and Jess as my witness, right? Am I lying about any of this? No. We had to walk to our cars like this. With groanings, too deep for words. Oh. And then, you know, Jess opened the door for us, and we would go into the car like this, right back into that same position. Oh, it was a terrible experience that I'll never forget. What does that have to do with the sermon? Well, here's what it has to do. The motto and slogan of the Olive Garden is that when you're here, you're family, right? And that could be a good motto for the Christian church too, right? The desire of our Father who art in heaven is that his people would not just be acquaintances or even friends, so we want to have friendship with each other, but that we would be a family. God has called people from every nation, every tribe, every tongue, every background, every age, every marital status, every persuasion you could imagine. He's brought them together as our Father, and he calls us brothers and sisters. Let's go back to where we were last week, Mark chapter 3. A core value of Living Faith Christian Church is that we want to be a family. Verse 13, this is when Jesus called his disciples. He went up to the mountain and he summoned those whom he himself wanted, and they came to him. And he appointed 12 so that they would be with him, and that he could send them out to preach and to have authority to cast out demons. Remember, we talked about this last week, that this is what it means to be a disciple. Jesus calls those he wants, and the reason why is he wants to be with them. That's the first part of being a disciple, to be with him. Then he sent them out to preach. They were going to become like him. They were going to share his message and follow in his footsteps. And then ultimately, he was going to give them authority to cast out demons, which is just one part of what it means to do what Jesus did. To do what Jesus did. And so this was his heart for those whom he called. And he appointed in verse 16, 12. Simon, whom he gave the name Peter, and James, the son of Zebedee, and John, the brother of James, the two sons of Zebedee. And to them he gave them the name Boanerges, which means sons of thunder. And Andrew, and Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, and Thomas, and James, the son of Alphaeus, and Thaddeus, and Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. So Jesus is calling these 12 men to follow him and to be his apprentices. He's going to have many disciples, men and women alike from different backgrounds, but these 12 are going to serve sort of as his close inner circle and family. These are his apprentices and his friends, and they're going to travel the countryside. They're going to be with him. They're going to become like him, and then they're going to do what Jesus did. Later in the same chapter, we can jump down to chapter 30, to verse 31. He's gone on some adventures and some ministry time, and they're in a home. And it says in verse 31, then his mother, this is talking about Jesus, his mother and his brothers arrived. And standing outside, they sent word to him and called him. A crowd was sitting around him, and they said to him, behold, your mother and your brothers are outside looking for you. Answering them, he said, who are my mother and my brothers? Interesting question. Verse 34, looking about at those who were sitting around him, he said, behold, my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of God, he is my what? Brother, and what else? Sister, and lastly, mother. Now, don't misunderstand. Jesus is not just ignoring his family or being disrespectful, right? One of the 10 of the first commandments is to honor your father and mother, right? There's great blessing in that. So Jesus, if you imagine this story, him sitting there, his mother and his brothers are knocking at the door, and they say, hey, Jesus, your mother and your brothers are here. It's not that he's going, yeah, whatever, I'm hanging with the disciples, right? But he's using this moment as a teachable moment to say, do you know who truly is my family? It's those who do the will of my Father. It's those who hear and do God's word. In Matthew's version of this, it says that he looks at his disciples and say, who is my mother and my brother? Who is my family? It's those that do God's will and God's word. And so in this moment, I'm sure after this he went up and he spoke to his mother, but in this moment he's sort of redefining the relationship that he has with his disciples to not just be people that are following around or good students, but they're actually his family. They're his brothers and his sisters and his close relationships. And then throughout the rest of the Gospels and then throughout the rest of the New Testament, one of the main images, one of the main metaphors and some of the most common language used to describe the relationship with Christians is that of a family. Brothers and sisters. And it's not just a cute metaphor, like it's brothers and sisters because of Christ. With God as our Father, Jesus as our brother, we now are brothers and sisters in Christ. Turn to your neighbor and say, hey bro, hey sis. And so what Jesus is doing here is he is forming a new community, not based on blood, but based on those who followed him. Now, this is important because in the world of Jesus, and I'm about to tell you something that is very unlike the world we live in. In the ancient world of Jesus, in the Mediterranean world and the Jewish culture specifically, community and family was everything. Now, many of us come from good, strong families, multi-generational. Many of us come from broken families. Like on my mother's side of the family, like we could have a visitor this morning that is literally someone I'm related to and I wouldn't even know. But like the other side of my family, right? Jess's side, I mean, if you're Italian, you're a cousin. But in the ancient world, there was really no concept of an individual trying to make it on their own. You remember the story of the prodigal son? I mean, it's shocking when the prodigal son leaves the family. Because in that culture, you just didn't do that. In the world of Jesus and the Bible, the group was more important than the individual. Now, in the modern era, especially in America and the West, the individual's needs are more important than the group's. Here's some data to back that up. This is from Dr. Joseph Hellerman. He writes a book called When the Church Was a Family. And he says, social scientists have a label for the pervasive cultural orientation of the modern American society that makes it so difficult for us to stay connected and grow together in community with one another. They call it radical individualism. What this amounts to is simple enough. We in America have been socialized to believe that our own dreams, goals, personal fulfillment ought to take precedence over the well-being of any group, our church or our family, for example, to which we belong. The immediate needs of the individual are more important than the long-term health of the group, so we leave and withdraw rather than stay and grow up when the going gets rough in the church or in the home. The cultural outlook of the ancient world generated a markedly different approach to interpersonal relationships. In the world which Jesus and his followers lived, it was a distinctly strong group culture in which the health of the group, not the needs of the individual, received first priority. And the most important group for the persons in the ancient world was the family. It is hardly accidental that the New Testament writers chose the concept of family as the central social metaphor to describe the kind of interpersonal relationships that were characterizing those in the early Christian communities. God's intention is not to become the feel-good father of a myriad of isolated individuals who appropriate the Christian faith as yet another avenue towards personal enlightenment. The New Testament picture of the church as a family flies in the face of our individualistic cultural orientation. So even Jesus saying something like, who is my mother, my father, or my mother and my brothers, like for years I read that and it was super uncomfortable, right? Even the concept of family, as I broach this subject as a part of what makes our church the way it is and how we want to be as a church, like some of you already might be squirming right now because what is he going to ask me to do and be at the end of this? The say hi to your neighbor part is enough, Pastor. But what I want to show you is that biblically speaking, the church was a family. Let's go to Acts chapter 2. A few books away, Acts chapter 2. This is on the day of Pentecost when the Spirit of God fills the church. Famous closing verses of this great day. Acts chapter 2, verse 41. It says that those who had received his word were baptized, and that day there were added about 3,000 souls. These people that were added to the church, they were continually devoting themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship and to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone kept feeling a sense of awe, and many wonders and signs were taking place through the apostles. And all those who believed were together and had all things in common. They began selling their property and possessions and were sharing with them all as anyone might have need. Day by day, continuing with one mind in the temple, breaking bread from house to house. And they were taking their meals together with gladness and sincerity of heart, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord was adding to their number day by day those who were being saved. So even after the Spirit comes, the people still stay together. All right? Jesus said that at the coming of the Spirit, that he would be with us wherever we go. That the presence of Jesus wouldn't be confined to just his bodily presence wherever town he was in, but through the Spirit would be with every person wherever they might be. But still, after the coming of the Spirit, the people are together. Let's go to chapter 4, so we don't think it was just on Pentecost. Chapter 4, verse 32. This is a little while after that. It says in verse 32 that the congregation of those who believed were of one heart and soul, And not one of them claimed anything belonging to him as his own, but all things were common property to them. And with great power the apostles were giving testimony to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus. And abundant grace was upon them all. For there was not a needy person among them. For all who were owners of land or houses would sell them and bring the proceeds of the sales and lay them at the apostles' feet. And they would just be distributed to each as they had need. So what we see in this early church community is mutual care and love for each other. They're not forcing people to sell property and turn it into the church or anything like that. But people out of the free will of their heart are doing this to make sure that no one among them would have a need. Now, when you read that, that does not sound like church. But it does sound like family. Someone has a need, you help them out. Someone's struggling, you make sacrifices to make sure you can take care of that need. If there's someone that's sick, the focus of the house turns to take care of that person and for the rest of us to stay away from their germs. Family. A family is what the early church was all about. Throughout the rest of the New Testament, especially in the epistles, you see family over and over again. Brothers and sisters, over and over again. This would be the mindset of a New Testament believer, where the group was significantly important and the emphasis being on community. In Paul's writings, he uses the phrase, our Lord, 55 times. He uses the phrase, my Lord, once. Community, family, the group, right? We read these verses during the family weekend. Pastor Pam shared these verses from 1 John. 1 John 3:11. This is the message which you've heard from the beginning, that we should love one another. But then he gets specific. He says, we know that we have passed out of death into life because we love who? The brethren. That's speaking about brothers and sisters. He who does not love abides in death. Everyone who hates his brother is a murderer, and you know no murderer has eternal life abiding in him. We know love by this, that he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for whom? The brethren. Whoever has the world's goods and sees his brother in need and closes his heart against him, how does the love of God abide in him? Little children, let us not love with word or with tongue, but in what? Deed and truth. One more from 1 John. 1 John 4:20. If someone says, I love God and hates his brother, he's a liar. For the one who does not love his brother whom he has seen cannot love God whom he has not seen. And this is the commandment we have from him, that the one who loves God should also love whom? His brother also. Now, I want you to think about it. Those of you that are familiar with especially the New Testament, and if this is your first time, you'll have to go on this adventure and discover this for yourself. But there is a lot of ink spilled in the New Testament talking not about how the Christians should relate to their unbelieving neighbors, but how the Christians should relate to other Christians. It's sort of assumed throughout the pages that when we as Christians look at the world, we're going to love them. We're going to serve them. We're going to preach the gospel to them. We're going to love even our enemies. Like, that's a given. Go do that. But the rest of the New Testament is all about how we get along together as a family. Ephesians, the first 3 chapters, all about the gospel. The last 3 chapters, how to get along in a family. Colossians, first 2 chapters, all about what God has done. The rest of it, how do we get along together as a family? One another, brothers and sisters, let us, comes up over and over and over again. So, why of all the things God could choose to speak of the church, why did he design it this way? Well, there are many reasons, but the way that I want to focus on for the remainder of our time today, the reason why God has called us to be a family in general, but especially in our church here, is because family is one of the most powerful forces for formation. Being in a community forms us. Family forms and shapes us. It's how we grow up. God's design is that we would grow up and mature in a family. Those of us that didn't have great families either had to figure out a lot on our own, or we have found that when we come to Christ that we're deficient in a lot of things that we did not learn from our families. God wants us to be a Christian family so that we can become more like Jesus because we're together, because we help each other. Remember, there's no such thing as a lone wolf Christian. If you stay on your own, there's a lot of the New Testament you cannot obey. And so God has put us in a family, and a unique thing about a family is a group that you do not choose to be a part of. Nor do you choose the other members that are a part of it. As much as you, when you were a little child, put up that for sale sign on your little brother or sister, and you were having a lemonade stand and trying to get 2 for the price of 1, a cup of lemonade, and little Jimmy, you wanted to get rid of him. That just doesn't happen. Family is a group that we don't choose. I want you to think back again to the disciples that we just read Jesus chose. I mean, it was a diverse group of people. Simon the Zealot, many of you may know this. Simon the Zealot didn't mean he was like really passionate. To be a zealot during the time of Jesus was a political party. The Zealots believed that the Roman government that was oppressing them should be overthrown violently. That's what Zealots were. And then you have Matthew, who was a tax collector. Tax collectors were people that said, I don't know what to do about Rome. Why don't I just go join them and work for them? So you have someone that wants to, at one point in his life, kill every Roman he sees. And then you have Matthew who says, they're not so bad. They pay pretty well too. And they're now sitting at the table together having supper. Awkward. Please don't bring up politics. Please don't bring up politics. Please don't bring up politics. James and John are nicknamed the sons of thunder. I mean, these 2 boys are the kind of guys that they're so fired up all the time that it probably got annoying, right? They're literally like, when something didn't go well, when they were journeying, one of them goes up to Jesus thinking this is a good idea and says, why don't we call fire down from heaven and destroy the city? You know anybody like that? I mean, that's wild. Intense. The sons of thunder. Peter, super passionate, up and down emotionally on every page. You've got James and John sitting at the same table with Peter, right? Boom! And then, sitting at that table, you have the other disciples, some of whom you never hear from in the Bible. Thaddeus says nothing in the New Testament. You got the sons of thunder all fired up, and Thaddeus just saying, okay, all right. I hope Jesus' mother and brothers knock soon, because this is getting intense, right? But the same is true of us. The same is true of us. The beauty of the Christian church is that we are a part of a community that we did not pick and select. Some people have a hard time with that. Some people want to form communities that are only made up of people that they handpick and choose, that believe and think the same way as they do, that come from the same background as they do. But that's not God's design, because in family we have opportunities for formation. When you come to church on Sunday, and someone opens the door, and one of the greeters seats you, and then another one of the greeters seats someone else right next to you, and it's that person that kind of bothers you sometimes. That's something that you deal with when you're in a family. You pull into the parking lot, and somebody parked in the spot you like to park in. Guess what? You're dealing with the reality of a family. Someone is sitting in your spot. That stuff happens all the time. I was sitting on the couch there. When I got up real quick, I was coming back to that spot. I mean, that stuff happens in a family. Can you say amen to those things happen in a family? Right? People of different backgrounds, people of different persuasions, people of different personalities, people of different ways of looking at things. And you can imagine the earliest disciples potentially wondering from time to time, why did Jesus choose them? And none of us would ever say that out loud, but you might feel that way about some of the people in this room. Why did Jesus choose them? Or maybe, to spruce it up a little bit, why did Jesus choose them to be in this family? There's a bunch of other families. Why can't they go? Can't we put a sign up front, Christians for sale? But that is why the New Testament says what it says. Go to Colossians. We'll look at this one section in Colossians. Colossians chapter 3. We're a part of a community of people that we did not pick, and that's just the way God wants it. Colossians chapter 3, verse 12. Think about this community that we're a part of, this family we're a part of, and this is why God says things like this. So then, as those who have been chosen by God, holy and beloved, put on a heart of compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, patience. Now, we need to have those attributes out there in the world. But that's not what he's speaking of specifically. He's talking about it in the family. Bearing with one another and forgiving each other. Whoever has a complaint, what a word to choose. Whoever has a complaint against anyone, just as the Lord forgave you, so also should you. Beyond all these things, put on what? Put on love, which is the perfect bond of unity. Let the peace of Christ rule in your heart, to which you were called in one body, one family, and be thankful. Let the word of Christ richly dwell within you, with all wisdom and teaching and admonishing one another with psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing with thankfulness in your heart to God. Whatever you do in word or deed, do all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks through him to God the Father. This picture here is what the family should be like. There are so many places we could go this morning, which we don't have time for, that talk about how our interactions in the family should be. But in any family, there are going to be disagreements. Amen? But in a family, disagreements aren't deal breakers. In a family, disagreements aren't deal breakers. For example, even in this very room, in the year 2020 and 2021, I know there are some of you that did not agree with how we implemented COVID protocols. I know that. But you know what? The disagreement wasn't a deal breaker. For you, wearing a mask was not as important as gathering as a family. And I want to thank you for being a good brother and sister in those moments. The political opinion of this side of the room might be different than the political opinion of this side of the room, but we put those things aside because we are prioritizing the most important thing, that God is our Father and Jesus is our brother, and so we bear with one another. And we don't say, I wonder why the Lord chose him. We say, oh, I wonder why the Lord chose him. How is this person going to help me be better? You know the famous proverb that iron sharpens iron, right? Well, iron only sharpens iron when it's put together close, and sometimes sparks fly, but that's how we get sharper. Family forms us. We are going to be better for Christ if we stick together and act like a family. Hellerman says this: spiritual formation occurs primarily in the context of community. People who remain connected with their brothers and sisters in the local church almost invariably grow in self-understanding. They mature in their ability to relate in healthy ways to God and to their fellow human beings. This is exactly the case for those courageous Christians who stick it out through the often messy process of interpersonal discord and conflict resolution. Long-term interpersonal relationships are the crucible of genuine progress in the Christian life. People who stay also grow. People who leave do not grow. We all know people who are consumed with a spiritual wanderlust. But we never get to know them very well because they cannot seem to stay put. They move along from church to church, ever searching for a congregation that will better satisfy their felt needs. But like trees repeatedly transplanted from soil to soil, these spiritual nomads fail to put down roots and seldom experience lasting and fruitful growth in their Christian lives. It is a simple but profound biblical reality that we both grow and thrive together, or we do not grow much at all. And so in a family, and in this church family, when things get hard and when you feel pressure, you have some options. And the option is not, should I stay or should I go? The options are, should I go or should I grow? Not stay or go, but should I go or should I grow? There's another not as well-known biblical scholar named Dan Matat who said this: being a part of this church can be really hard. It's a place of truth, a place that challenges you to change and be better. I love this family. Yeah. He said that to me. We're not going to make bumper stickers. Being part of Living Faith Christian Church can be really hard. But relationships can be difficult. And we live in a world that is quick to dispose of and quick to leave and puts the person first. And we want to put our relationship with God first. We want to love God and we want to love others. And God's design and heart for our church is that we would be a family, right? And again, there's many things to talk about in light of this family, how we should be, how we should take care of each other, reaching out, things like that. But I want us to understand that being part of a family is going to help us be more like Jesus. It's going to help us to be with Jesus, become like Jesus, and do what Jesus did. And we have other options, and there are other options out there. Options like thinking of church only in light of attendance and obligation. Church is a place you go. Church is not a person, a family you're a part of. I went to church. We should probably go to church. I've said things like that. Do we really have to go to church? Yes, you're preaching, Victor. You need to get out of bed and go. We don't want to think of it like just a place that we attend, that we are obligated to do, or we put our time in and now, God's going to like us this week. Another option is that we could create a church culture that is very personal and private, right? A relationship with God is personal, but it's not private. All right, we all say that we are the church, right? We are the church. We are a family. You don't say, I am a family. Right? So another option, and I know that this is tempting for some of us, and maybe this is where you are this morning, I understand it. Maybe you are at the place where it's just personal and private. I want to hear the message, I want to sing the songs, and then I need to go home. And I understand that temptation. I understand how you might feel, and many reasons why you might feel that way. But God is calling us to something beautiful, beyond obligation, beyond just personal, to be a part of a family. This next one is very common in our society, where we think of church in light of a consumer or business relationship. We go to get what we need. We get it and we're happy. When we don't get it, we try to find a new place to shop. As long as the church community is doing what I feel I want it to do or need to do, or it's what I like, then I'm a part of it. But when it's not, then I'm not. I had someone many years ago come to one of our home Bible studies, and I remember we had mentioned that we were going to start a new series on a book of the Bible. And we had someone there for the first time. This person had been a part of our church, but hadn't been a part of the home groups. And they came and we announced, next week we're going to study, I don't remember what it was. Let's say it was Ephesians. And they left and they said, thank you very much. This is really wonderful. And I'm thinking, they're going to come back and think, I'm not really into Ephesians, so I probably won't be coming back. Some people make that decision and make that choice. What is the sermon series? What kind of music do they have? How much are they going to ask me to give? I mean, these are all questions, and we're thinking about ourselves in light of the church in a consumer-business relationship. If the restaurant you like stops serving your favorite meal, you know what you can do? Go to a different restaurant. But we don't want to be like that when it comes to the family of God. And then the last thing is we can find ourselves as acquaintances and no more, where we just really want to keep it surface, and we don't want to get past the Sunday smiles. And I understand that too. I have days when that's what I want to do. right? But there is something, not just that the church family can give to you, but I believe there's probably a lot that you don't realize that you can give to others. We've talked about this before, but just looking at this room this morning, I'm reminded that everybody here has so much to offer. And many of us don't believe that. Thinking that like the only way you can help somebody else is if you're standing up here. Oh my gosh. This is incredibly ineffective. Why'd you laugh? I know that there are times in your life where a sermon has really hit you and changed your life, but I know there are more times when it was a phone call or sitting in that room eating a sandwich, or it was after the service when you stayed here and someone came over to you to show you love, right? You see, this family dynamic that we're talking about, it doesn't really happen at 10 o'clock to 10:30 to 11:30. The family stuff happens at 11:30 when this is over. The family stuff happens not here at 10 o'clock. It happens at somebody's house on a Tuesday or at a small group on a Wednesday. It happens at the men's weekend. It happens at the women's day. It happens when you're knitting after church together. That's when the family stuff happens. That's when the formation happens. It's not just about one person performing or presenting something. It's about a family coming together. And that has to remain as the core of our church. If we ever become a church where we're just interested in hearing what whoever is up here says alone, we're missing the point of a family. We're missing the point of a family. This past couple weeks ago at the noon Bible study, Millie and Barbara Bartlett were sitting together. They've been friends. How long have you been friends? Decades? Long time? Going back into the 50s. That's unbelievable. And I remember what Millie said was she put her arm around Barbara, and she said, Barbara was with me in some of the hardest times in my life. And I was with her when her husband died a couple years ago. In the good times and bad, we're here for each other. And I know for me, my church family chased after me when I was running away from God. My church family encouraged me when I was sad. My church family has helped me when I was without. My church family has helped me make important decisions and helped me not make decisions that would have been bad for me. My church family has been a major part of me hearing from God and believing God is at work and becoming more like God through good and bad. My church family has helped me in those areas. I want to be a family. And I think that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to be a church family, and that's why we eat together every single week. Because that's what families do. We announce the birthdays, and we announce when someone's having a baby, and when someone's engaged, and when someone has overcome cancer treatment. Because we're a family. We carve pumpkins and make gingerbread houses together, and we help each other move because we're a family. We go to funerals because we're a family. We sit together in our service, and whether we're reluctant or not, we say hi to our neighbor because we're a family. We confront each other. We listen to each other because we're a family. We call each other when we haven't seen you in a while. That's what a family does. We pray for each other. We push each other. We play together. We meet in homes. We share what we have with each other because we're a family. And I don't know what kind of family you've been a part of in the past, whether good, bad, or otherwise, but in this family, we want to love each other and care for each other and help each other be better because you're here and because I'm here. That's what a family does. And I think we can get better. For sure. We can move from being strangers to neighbors and from neighbors to family. And I want to acknowledge and recognize that I know some of us here have been coming to this church building for a while, but we have some hesitancy in getting a little deeper, and I understand that. I understand that. I respect your reasons, right? Some of us have been through really difficult situations with churches. So we're kind of just like, I understand that. But I'm glad you're here. And I want to do my best to love you. Because that's how things change. That's how relationships grow, when we love each other. And then, Lord willing, there will be a day when some of that hesitancy comes down and you'll be able to love me because I need it. Hebrews chapter 10, verses 23 and 25 says, "Let us hold fast to the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. And let us consider how to stimulate one another to love and good deeds, not forsaking our assembling together as the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near." And I'll close with this quote from John Mark Comer, who said, "Stay with your church, especially with your closest siblings in the family of God. Live in a thick web of interdependent relationships. Quietly defy the individualism that is wreaking havoc across the West. Surrender your autonomy to love. Place yourself in the constraints of community, for it is there we are set free. Give up your preferences for the sake of others. Risk vulnerability. We will get hurt, and we will hurt in return. That's the part of facing grace. Our greatest wounds come from relationship, but so does our deepest healing. The risk is worth it." Let's pray. Father, help us to love you and love people. Help us to follow Jesus in his way, and help us to be a family. Help us to welcome new siblings and show hospitality and welcome the strangers. Let us fight for each other and care about each other. Just help us have hearts that are bigger today. And I just ask that you continue to help us to make Living Faith Christian Church not just a church in the traditional sense, but a family in the biblical and spiritual sense. Thank you for calling us to this family. Through Jesus we pray. Amen.